The sun had just begun to set when a worn-out truck rumbled into the quiet highway truck stop. Its tires kicked up dust as it rolled to a stop near the diner, the engine letting out a low, tired growl before fading into silence. Inside the cab sat a middle-aged man, his skin dark and lined from years of life in the military, and the long hours on the road now. He was a veteran, recently retired, taking a long drive across the country to visit family he hadn't seen in months. His hands gripped the steering wheel loosely as he looked out at the empty parking lot, noticing the occasional truck rolling past, but otherwise a peaceful scene. He stepped out of the truck, stretching the stiff muscles that a long day of driving had tightened. The air was cool, carrying the faint smell of diesel fuel and hot coffee from the diner. The veteran wore a simple baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, a faded jacket and jeans. He moved with a calm, deliberate pace, carrying himself like someone who had learned the value of keeping a clear head in tense situations. This was just a stop, a place to rest for an hour or so, grab some food, and then get back on the road. He didn't know that tonight, this ordinary stop would soon turn into something far more intense than he had ever expected. As he pushed open the diner door, the little bell above it jingled. The sound was familiar and comforting in its own way, a small signal that he had entered a safe, ordinary place. He found a booth near the window, away from the small crowd scattered across the diner. Some truckers ate quietly, reading newspapers or scrolling through phones, while a couple of locals sipped coffee and chatted in hushed tones. The veteran ordered a coffee and a simple meal, keeping his voice low and even, not wanting to draw attention to himself. Outside, the roar of motorcycles grew louder, cutting through the calm evening air. Two bikers, rough-looking men clad in leather jackets, rumbled into the parking lot, their machines thundering over the asphalt. The veteran glanced up from his coffee, noting the motorcycles with mild curiosity. They were not part of his world, not people he interacted with often, but their presence was impossible to ignore. The bikers dismounted, their boots clanging against the concrete as they adjusted helmets and gloves. There was a confidence in their stride, almost arrogance, that immediately made the veteran's senses sharpen. He had been in situations before where danger lurked in subtle ways, and this felt like one of them. The bikers scanned the parking lot, eyes narrowing as they seemed to search for someone. The veteran watched quietly, keeping a calm demeanor but noting the tension in their movements. He could sense the aggression, the expectation that they would be confronted with someone who owed them something, or who could be easily intimidated. It was clear they were looking for trouble, and he realized almost immediately that he might be the wrong target, though he didn't yet know why they were here. One of the bikers started walking toward the diner door, a smirk on his face that suggested he expected a reaction. The veteran continued to sip his coffee, keeping his eyes on the table, his posture relaxed but ready. He had learned from his years in the military that a calm appearance could be just as disarming as any weapon. Other patrons began to notice the approaching figures glancing around nervously, sensing the potential for conflict. Some quietly picked up their things, preparing to leave if things got heated, while others watched silently, curious but cautious. The biker pushed open the door, and the veteran finally looked up, meeting the man's gaze. There was an instant assessment, an unspoken challenge in the way they looked at each other. The veteran's eyes were steady, unwavering, while the bikers held a hint of impatience and expectation. He didn't move, didn't react with fear, which seemed to confuse the biker momentarily. He had expected a different response, perhaps tension or visible worry, but not the calm he saw in the veteran's face. The second biker followed, their combined presence making the diner feel smaller, the air heavier. Their laughter and joking contrasted sharply with the tension that the veteran felt, a strange mixture of casual bravado and unspoken threat. They were loud, making sure to be noticed, and the veteran didn't flinch. He remained seated, finishing his coffee in deliberate, slow sips as if nothing mattered. But inside, his mind worked quickly, assessing exit routes, evaluating the potential for danger, and preparing for whatever might come next. The veteran thought about the motorcycles, the leather jackets, the rough hands, and the intense stares. He realized they were looking for someone else entirely, someone who had caused them trouble in the past. But in the moment, they didn't know that, and he knew it was better not to make a sudden move. Instead, he stayed calm, showing nothing, keeping his hands visible on the table, His military training had taught him the importance of maintaining composure, and he relied on that now, feeling the familiar rhythm of focused awareness that came in situations of potential conflict. The bikers moved closer, scanning the diner with quick, sharp glances. Their eyes landed on him more than once, their expressions changing as they whispered to each other. The veteran noticed this subtle shift and understood that they were deciding how to approach. He didn't make eye contact immediately, keeping himself grounded, his posture relaxed but ready. Every muscle was alert, every sense tuned to the room. He could feel the tension like a low hum in the air, a warning that something might escalate if handled carelessly. Despite the aggression and the loud voices, there was an odd normalcy to the scene. Other patrons continued their meals, some casting furtive glances, others pretending not to notice. The diner staff moved with quiet efficiency, cleaning tables and serving food, hoping that the situation wouldn't erupt into violence. The veteran appreciated this normalcy, the small indicators of everyday life, as they reminded him that the world outside this tense moment was still ordinary, still safe in its own way. As the bikers approached the booth, the veteran prepared himself mentally. He reminded himself to breathe steadily, to maintain the calm exterior that could diffuse the situation before it spiraled out of control. He knew that aggression often met aggression, but restraint and composure could turn the tables. This was not a time for heroics, not a time to provoke, but a moment to survive and navigate the unexpected danger with intelligence and calm. He finished his coffee slowly, placing the cup gently on the table, keeping his eyes down but ready to react. The bikers paused nearby, speaking quietly but harshly, their words meant to intimidate, though not yet directed at him personally. He could sense their frustration growing as they realized their intended target was not immediately apparent. They were assessing him now, weighing whether he was connected to the person they sought. The veteran's calm demeanor continued to work in his favor, making them hesitate, creating a momentary pause in the building tension. The diner felt smaller with the bikers' presence, the walls almost closing in with the pressure of the situation. The veteran remained seated, a picture of quiet confidence, aware of every movement in the room. He understood that this confrontation could escalate in an instant, and he was prepared to act if necessary, but for now he let the tension simmer, keeping his voice low and his body language controlled. Time seemed to stretch in the diner, the ticking of an unseen clock marking each heartbeat. The bikers finally stepped closer to the booth, their movements deliberate, their eyes scanning for any sign of fear or weakness. The veteran met each look with steady, unwavering eyes, projecting an unspoken message. He was aware, prepared, and not easily intimidated. He knew that in this small, ordinary truck stop, a test of patience, composure, and courage was quietly unfolding, one that could have consequences far beyond this evening. As the sun continued to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot, the veteran felt a strange mixture of calm and readiness. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time in the sense that the bikers had misjudged him, but he was also exactly where he needed to be to handle the situation. He had been trained for moments like this, and now it was a matter of maintaining control, keeping the situation from erupting and letting reason, not fear, guide the outcome. The veteran took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, grounding him in the present moment. The bikers stood near the edge of the booth, still assessing, still unsure. Other patrons continued to watch, a quiet tension spreading through the diner. The veteran sipped the last of his coffee, placing the empty cup on the table with a gentle clink. His calm, measured actions contrasted with the uncertainty and aggression around him, creating a quiet power that was hard to ignore. As the first part of the confrontation drew to a close, the veteran realized that he had already achieved something important. He had prevented immediate violence through calm observation, patience, and composure. The bikers were no closer to understanding who he was or whether he was connected to their target, and that pause created an opportunity to navigate the situation carefully. He remained seated, a calm presence amid tension, ready for whatever came next, knowing that the rest of the evening would require both courage and wisdom to get through safely. The veteran remained seated, his calm demeanor masking the alertness that flowed through every muscle in his body. The diner was quiet except for the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation from a few scattered patrons. Yet he could feel the tension thickening as the bikers approached the booths, their heavy boots echoing against the floor. He had been in situations before where aggression was near, and his training had taught him to remain composed and assess every movement. Now it was a game of patience and perception, and he knew that how he reacted could either escalate or diffuse the situation. One of the bikers leaned casually against the edge of a nearby booth, smirking, his eyes fixed on the veteran. His leather jacket creaked with the motion, and the smell of sweat and motor oil filled the small space around him. The veteran didn't flinch. He finished adjusting the sleeves of his jacket, subtly placing his hands where they could be seen, not hiding anything. The biker's smirk faltered for a moment, clearly expecting resistance or intimidation, but finding none. The other biker moved behind him, casting glances around the diner, sizing up the environment as if calculating the odds. Their confidence was evident, but there was also an impatience, a simmering frustration that grew with each passing second. "Hey there," one of the bikers finally said, his voice low but harsh. "You know a guy named Terrence? We're looking for him." The veteran looked up slowly, meeting the biker's gaze with steady eyes. He didn't respond immediately, letting the moment stretch, creating a subtle pause that forced the biker to reassess. The veteran's calmness was deliberate. He had learned that aggression met aggression, but composure could create hesitation, and hesitation could save a life. "I think you might have the wrong person," the veteran said, his voice even and calm. "I don't know anyone by that name." The biker's eyes narrowed slightly, scanning every detail of the veteran's face and body language. He leaned closer, clearly skeptical, as if trying to see through the quiet confidence that the man projected. The other biker circled behind, positioning himself slightly to the side, still observing, waiting for a reaction. The diner's atmosphere was tense now, the few patrons who remained aware of the situation quiet, uncertain if it would explode into violence. The veteran remained seated, deliberately relaxed but internally ready. He had been trained to assess threats, to look for patterns in behavior, and to respond with precision if necessary. His eyes scanned the room, noting exits, potential cover, and the positions of other people who might be affected by the confrontation. He understood that his calm exterior was not just a shield for himself, but a barrier that could prevent panic from spreading among the other patrons. The bikers exchanged glances, their confidence slightly shaken by the veteran's unflinching presence. "You sure about that?" one asked, a hint of menace creeping into his voice. "You don't know Terrence? You sure?" The veteran nodded slowly, keeping his tone measured. "I'm sure. You might want to double-check your information." A few of the diner staff moved discreetly, keeping a close watch on the situation while trying not to draw attention. The veteran noticed them but did not look directly at them. He understood that others were aware of the tension, and their subtle movements reflected the unspoken hope that reason and calm would prevent any confrontation from escalating. The biker's aggressive energy contrasted sharply with the veteran's stillness, creating a sort of invisible barrier between threat and safety. The first biker stepped even closer, his face now mere inches from the veteran's. He was searching for any hint of deception, for a crack in the calm facade. The veteran held his gaze steadily, showing nothing but quiet confidence. His military background had taught him the importance of eye contact, of conveying readiness without aggression. He knew that any sudden move could trigger a dangerous reaction, so he remained deliberate in every gesture, every blink, every breath. "You don't know him?" the second biker asked, his voice sharper now, tinged with frustration. "Are you messing with us?" The veteran shook his head slowly. "No, I'm telling the truth. I don't know him." His tone was firm but not confrontational, a careful balance that projected honesty while asserting control over his own space. He subtly shifted in the booth to keep himself ready for any sudden movements, aware of the danger but refusing to give the bikers the satisfaction of fear. The bikers hesitated, caught between disbelief and the realization that their assumptions might have been wrong. They were used to confrontation, to using intimidation to get answers or compliance, but the veteran was not reacting in the way they expected. His calmness was disarming, confusing them, creating a momentary gap in their aggression that he could exploit if necessary. The other patrons watched closely, sensing the tension but also sensing the quiet power emanating from the man at the booth. One of the bikers finally pulled a small photograph from his jacket, holding it up. "This him?" he asked, showing the picture to the veteran. The veteran glanced at it briefly, Recognizing immediately that the man in the photo was not him, he gestured subtly toward the photo. "No, that's not me," he said softly, his voice steady. "You've got the wrong person." The biker stared at the image, then back at the veteran, clearly trying to reconcile the information with his expectations. The second biker leaned in as well, scanning the photo, muttering to himself, realizing that the confrontation was not going as planned. The veteran continued to speak, his voice calm and deliberate, carefully choosing his words. "I've never met this man. I don't know where he is, and I don't have anything to do with him. You should check your information again before making mistakes like this." His tone was firm, confident, and respectful, avoiding any escalation while asserting his position. The bikers shifted slightly, their aggression tempered by confusion and growing embarrassment. The diner seemed to hold its breath. The quiet clicking of utensils and low murmurs of conversation contrasted with the unspoken tension of the confrontation. The veteran felt the weight of the situation but maintained control. His training and life experience guided every thought and action, keeping him calm while allowing him to read the bikers' behavior accurately. He could feel the frustration and uncertainty emanating from them, their confidence slowly eroding under the weight of reason and calm. Finally, one of the bikers muttered, almost to himself, "Maybe we got the wrong guy." The other nodded slowly, still wary, but beginning to understand that they had misjudged the situation. The veteran remained seated, maintaining his calm posture, giving them the space to realize their mistake without provoking further aggression. The balance of power had shifted subtly, from intimidation to careful assessment and reason. The veteran observed every detail as the bikers slowly stepped back, their body language softening slightly. He kept his voice low and steady, ensuring that any communication was clear, deliberate, and non-threatening. The tension in the diner began to ease, though the presence of the bikers still carried a hint of unease. Other patrons relaxed slightly, sensing that the situation was moving toward resolution rather than escalation. The veteran understood that patience was key. He continued to position himself in a way that remained alert yet non-aggressive, projecting confidence without hostility. His calmness served as a shield, a way to prevent panic from spreading and a tool to give the bikers the opportunity to correct their mistake without confrontation. He had turned what could have been a dangerous encounter into a controlled situation simply by remaining composed and perceptive. The bikers finally exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. Their frustration was still visible, but it was now tempered by understanding. They had misidentified the veteran, and the realization brought a subtle shift in their behavior. They were no longer the dominant, aggressive figures entering the diner moments ago, but men caught in a moment of uncertainty. The veteran's calm presence had neutralized their intended intimidation, and he had done so without raising his voice, without physical movement, and without escalating tension unnecessarily. As the second part of the confrontation drew to a close, the veteran remained seated, sipping the last of his coffee. The bikers lingered near the edge of the diner, talking quietly, reassessing their approach. The veteran's calm, measured actions had changed the dynamic completely. What began as a potentially dangerous confrontation had now shifted toward clarity and understanding. The quiet power of composure, patience, and careful communication had prevailed, setting the stage for the next step in navigating this tense and unexpected situation. The veteran remained seated, his posture relaxed but alert, watching the bikers closely as they whispered to each other near the edge of the diner. Their body language had shifted slightly from the initial aggressive approach to a more cautious stance, though their presence still carried tension. He knew this was a critical moment. The confusion he saw in their expressions meant they were realizing their mistake, but it also meant that the situation could change at any moment if handled carelessly. He took a slow breath, keeping his calm even as his senses remained fully aware. One of the bikers finally spoke, his voice quieter now, almost hesitant. "Wait, you're telling the truth? You really don't know him?" The veteran nodded, his calm tone unwavering. "Yes, I don't know him. I think you are looking for someone else. I'm a retired military veteran traveling alone. You've got the wrong person." His words were simple, direct, and respectful, designed to diffuse aggression while asserting his own position. He could see the subtle surprise flicker across the biker's face. They had expected fear, maybe anger, but not a composed man explaining the situation with clarity. The other biker frowned, scanning the veteran carefully. His posture was defensive now, uncertainty replacing the earlier arrogance. The veteran noticed every subtle movement, every tiny change in the biker's expressions. His eyes softened slightly, not to signal weakness, but to show that he was speaking truthfully. He had learned over the years that calm honesty often disarms those who approach with aggression, and he used that knowledge now. The biker with the photograph pulled it out again, holding it closer to the veteran. "We were told he was at this truck stop," he said, his voice low but sharp. "We need answers." The veteran glanced at the image, then shook his head slowly. "That's not me," he said clearly. "You need to check your information. I've never met this person. I am not him." His calm, unwavering gaze held the biker's eyes, and slowly the man's skeptical frown began to fade. He realized that they had indeed misjudged the situation, that the veteran in front of him was not their target. A tense silence followed. The diner seemed to hold its breath, the other patrons frozen in quiet anticipation. The veteran sipped his coffee slowly, deliberately, showing no sign of fear or irritation. He understood that the bikers needed time to process their mistake. His composed behavior offered them a way to step back without losing face. He had seen moments like this in the military, when tension could escalate to violence in seconds, and he knew the value of patience and measured action. Finally, the first biker spoke again, his tone softer, uncertain. We thought—" His voice trailed off as he looked at the veteran, realization dawning in his eyes. "We were looking for someone else. Looks like we made a mistake." The veteran nodded slightly, maintaining eye contact, letting the man feel the truth of his words without mocking or belittling him. The other biker glanced at his companion, then at the veteran as if seeking confirmation. The tension in their shoulders eased slightly, replaced by caution and acknowledgement of the error. The veteran decided to speak a little more, keeping his tone calm and controlled. "It happens. Mistakes are part of life, but threatening the wrong person can have serious consequences. You should always make sure before you confront someone." His words were firm yet respectful, offering both a lesson and a path toward resolution. The bikers nodded slowly, clearly absorbing what he was saying. They were embarrassed, their initial aggression replaced by a quiet understanding that they had misjudged the situation entirely. One of the diner staff approached carefully, holding a pot of coffee and giving the veteran a small, grateful smile. He nodded politely, acknowledging the staff's quiet support. The veteran appreciated the gesture but remained focused on the bikers, ensuring that the situation did not shift again. He could feel the tension in the room slowly ebbing, the other patrons beginning to relax, sensing that the immediate threat was over. Yet he remained alert, knowing that a single misstep could reignite the situation. The first biker finally lowered the photograph and looked down at the floor, muttering to himself. "We really messed up this time," he said quietly, almost under his breath. The second biker nodded, his hands resting loosely on his hips. They were no longer aggressive, their energy subdued by the realization of their mistake. The veteran maintained his calm posture, sipping the last of his coffee, his eyes following every subtle movement. His military training had taught him to read body language and predict reactions, and he used that skill now to ensure the bikers left without further incident. "Look," the veteran said softly but firmly, "you don't have to make this harder than it is. Go check your information. Make sure you are confronting the right person next time. Threatening someone who had nothing to do with your problem will only create more trouble for you." His words were simple and direct, carrying the weight of experience and quiet authority. The bikers nodded, their earlier bravado replaced with a quiet respect for the calm, confident man in front of them. The biker with the photograph finally straightened up and spoke to his companion. Yeah, let's go. We'll figure this out somewhere else." They began to move toward the exit, their heavy boots clicking against the diner floor. The veteran remained seated, keeping his calm demeanor until they were out of immediate sight. The tension in the diner began to dissipate fully, with a few patrons quietly expressing relief through small nods or whispered comments. As the bikers left the diner, the veteran took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment lift slightly. He had navigated a potentially dangerous situation with patience, calm, and controlled communication. He knew that if he had reacted with fear or aggression, the encounter could have turned violent in an instant. Instead, he had diffused the confrontation with composure and presence of mind, turning a tense situation into a moment of quiet resolution. The diner staff moved closer, offering polite words of thanks and small smiles, acknowledging the veteran's role in keeping the situation from escalating. The veteran nodded to each of them, appreciating their recognition but keeping his focus on finishing his brief rest. He understood that life often presented unexpected challenges, and the ability to handle them with composure was as important as any other skill he had learned during his years of service. Outside, the motorcycles were fading into the distance, their noise slowly disappearing, leaving only the quiet hum of the truck stop and the gentle rustling of the evening wind. The veteran finished his meal, cleaned his area, and prepared to continue his journey. The encounter had reminded him that danger could appear at any moment, but careful observation, patience, and calm could prevent harm. He took a final glance around the diner, ensuring nothing else required his attention, and felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had faced an unexpected confrontation and emerged unscathed, relying on his instincts and experience. As he stepped out into the cool evening air, the veteran reflected briefly on what had just happened. The bikers had come in with assumptions and aggression, ready to confront someone they thought had wronged them. But through calm presence, clear communication, and careful observation, the veteran had prevented a situation that could have turned dangerous. He understood the value of patience, the power of composure, and the importance of respecting both oneself and others. Even in tense moments, he climbed back into his truck, the engine roaring to life as he pulled away from the truck stop. The road stretched ahead, darkening as night approached, and he felt the familiar mix of solitude and purpose that came with long drives. He was grateful that he had handled the situation wisely, and that no one had been hurt. The encounter was a reminder of the unpredictability of life, and the importance of remaining steady in the face of misunderstanding or aggression. As the truck rolled down the highway, the veteran allowed himself a small, quiet smile. He had navigated an encounter that could have ended badly, and he had done so with dignity and calm. The road ahead was long, but he felt prepared for whatever might come next. The quiet lessons of the evening, the power of patience, the strength of calm, and the importance of clear communication would stay with him, guiding him as he continued on his journey. The experience was not just a test of composure, but a reminder of the quiet strength that could diffuse tension and protect both oneself and others in unexpected moments. The evening air had grown cooler as the veteran remained seated in the diner, finishing the last of his meal. The bikers had left, their heavy motorcycles fading into the distance, but the tension lingered like a faint shadow. The veteran took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment to reflect on the encounter. He had managed to navigate a potentially dangerous situation with calm and composure, and now the quiet of the diner felt comforting, almost like a reward for maintaining patience and clarity. As he sipped his coffee, the veteran noticed the diner staff moving about with a renewed sense of ease. Their earlier nervous glances had turned into subtle smiles and nods, acknowledging the calm and composed manner in which he had handled the bikers. A young waitress approached his table, her hands folded in front of her, eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and respect. "Thank you for staying calm," she said softly. "It could have gone badly, but you didn't let it." The veteran nodded, offering a small, polite smile. "It's what you do when situations get tense. Calmness can prevent a lot more problems than force ever could." The waitress nodded, clearly impressed. Most people would have panicked or argued. "You just handled it," she said. He simply shrugged, keeping his tone quiet and humble. "I've seen my share of tense moments before. You learn how to read people and stay in control. That's what matters." Other patrons who had stayed behind began to offer small, quiet acknowledgments as well. Some gave a nod or a slight smile, appreciating the veteran's calm approach. It was a small moment of connection, a recognition of his quiet strength that didn't need to be shouted or made dramatic. The diner, once tense and uneasy, now returned to its normal rhythm, the hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes slowly replacing the lingering tension. The veteran reflected on the bikers' behavior. They had entered with aggression and assumptions, ready to intimidate someone they believed owed them something. Yet his calm presence had diffused the situation, showing them that assumptions and rash actions could lead to embarrassment or worse. He understood that they were still learning, still adjusting their perceptions, and that sometimes people needed to recognize their mistakes in their own way. His calmness had given them space to do just that. The quiet moments allowed him to think more about the importance of patience and observation. In life, misunderstandings could escalate quickly, especially when combined with assumptions and aggression. He had seen it in his military service, and now he had experienced it in civilian life. The principles remained the same. Stay calm, observe carefully, and respond thoughtfully. Force or anger rarely led to a good outcome. Composure and clear communication often prevented unnecessary conflict. The veteran glanced around the diner once more, noting the subtle changes in the environment. The staff had relaxed. Other patrons were quietly returning to their routines, and the atmosphere had shifted from tension to relief. Even the air seemed lighter, carrying the faint smell of coffee and warm food instead of the heavy tension of earlier moments. It was a reminder that calmness not only protected oneself, but also helped create a sense of safety for others nearby. Outside, the motorcycle's distant rumble reminded him of the brief encounter, but the veteran allowed himself to let go of the lingering stress. He understood that holding on to tension would serve no purpose. Instead, he focused on the lessons from the experience, the quiet validation of handling a difficult situation, and the importance of remaining grounded in moments of uncertainty. The night was quiet now, and the roads ahead were long, but he felt prepared, carrying with him the reassurance that composure and awareness were powerful tools. He finished his coffee, setting the cup down gently, and took a moment to gather his things. The diner had returned to normal, but the experience lingered in his mind, a subtle reminder of the unexpected challenges that life could present. As he moved toward the door, he noticed the waitress again. She gave a small, respectful nod. He returned it with the same quiet acknowledgement, sharing a moment of mutual understanding that words were not necessary to express. It was the small human connections, the recognition of calm strength, that made moments like these meaningful. The veteran stepped outside, the cool air brushing against his face. The truck stop was quieter now, the distant hum of the highway the only sound, along with the faint fading echo of the bikers' motorcycles. He approached his truck calmly, checking around for any unexpected surprises, though he knew that the bikers were gone. His mind reviewed the encounter, recognizing the subtle but important choices he had made: patience over reaction, observation over assumption, calm over fear. These choices had shaped the outcome, preventing escalation and ensuring that everyone remained safe. As he settled into the driver's seat, he allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Life had a way of presenting unexpected tests, and while some could be dangerous, they also offered opportunities to practice control, awareness, and composure. He had faced such a test tonight, and had succeeded in maintaining his calm, ensuring a peaceful resolution to what could have been a dangerous encounter. The roads ahead were still long, but the sense of accomplishment and quiet confidence stayed with him. The veteran started the truck, the engine humming steadily, a comforting sound after the evening's tension. He glanced in the rearview mirror, the diner now a small, quiet scene behind him, its lights glowing softly against the darkening sky. He felt a quiet satisfaction, not from confrontation or dominance, but from the knowledge that he had handled the situation wisely, responsibly, and respectfully. It was a reminder that true strength often lay in restraint and composure, rather than aggression. As the truck merged back onto the highway, the veteran reflected on the lessons learned that evening. Assumptions could be dangerous, aggression could escalate unnecessarily, and a calm, observant presence could prevent conflict. He also understood that respect, clear communication, and patience were tools that everyone could use, not just in tense situations, but in everyday life. It was these qualities that turned a potentially negative encounter into a moment of learning and reflection. The veteran felt a renewed sense of purpose as he drove. The night was quiet, the stars beginning to peek out in the clear sky above, and he allowed himself a small, contented smile. He had navigated a challenge successfully, maintained his dignity, and ensured the safety of himself and those around him. The roads ahead were long, and life would continue to present unexpected moments, but he felt prepared, knowing that calmness and composure were his allies. In the quiet of the night, the veteran drove on, reflecting on the encounter, the lessons learned, and the subtle human connections that had made the evening meaningful. The biker incident was now behind him, but its lessons remained vivid. a reminder of the power of patience, observation, and calm action. He was ready for whatever lay ahead, carrying with him the quiet confidence of someone who had faced tension and uncertainty and emerged with composure and understanding, prepared to continue his journey with resilience and awareness. The highway stretched out ahead, dark and quiet, with only the gentle hum of the veteran's truck engine filling the night. The events at the diner replayed in his mind, not with fear or anger, but as a series of lessons that life had presented in its unpredictable way. He thought about the bikers, their aggression, and their assumptions, and realized how easily misunderstandings could escalate. It reminded him of his years in the military, where tension and conflict required calm minds and measured responses. He had faced danger before, but tonight had been different. It was a confrontation born of assumption rather than circumstance. He drove steadily, keeping a mindful pace, letting the road ahead and the quiet night soothe the lingering tension. The truck stop had returned to normal after the bikers left, the staff and patrons relieved that no violence had occurred. The veteran thought about the waitress and the small nods of appreciation from those who had remained. It struck him how moments of calm composure could ripple outward, affecting others in ways that went unnoticed. One person's patience could prevent chaos and even teach quiet lessons about respect, awareness, and self-control. As he drove, he reflected on the bikers' initial aggression. They had entered the diner with confidence, ready to confront someone they believed had wronged them. They had misjudged, acted on assumptions, and allowed anger to guide them. It could have ended badly, but his calm presence, measured words, and steady demeanor had diffused the tension. He understood that strength did not always come from force. Often, the quiet assurance of someone who remains composed under pressure was far more powerful. The veteran considered how life often presented such moments, not just in dramatic confrontations but in everyday misunderstandings. People made assumptions, reacted too quickly, and escalated situations unnecessarily. He had been lucky to have the training and experience to navigate the biker encounter without incident. He felt a quiet gratitude for his years of service, for the lessons they had instilled, and for the ability to remain calm when others acted impulsively. He glanced at the rearview mirror, imagining the bikers now driving elsewhere, perhaps reflecting on their mistake. He hoped that the lesson had reached them. Assumptions could lead to unnecessary aggression, and misjudging someone could have serious consequences. He didn't hold anger toward them. He recognized that people often acted on impulse and learned through experience. What mattered was that he had handled the situation responsibly, protecting himself and others without violence. The night was quiet, and the rhythm of the road seemed almost meditative. The veteran allowed his thoughts to wander, reflecting on the power of observation and awareness. In the diner, he had noticed every movement, every subtle change in posture, and every shift in tone. Those details had guided his responses and kept him safe. He understood that awareness was more than a skill. It was a mindset, a way of engaging with the world that could prevent unnecessary conflict and allow one to navigate life with intention and care. He thought about the small moments of human connection in the diner, the nods, the respectful gestures, and the soft words of appreciation from the staff. They had recognized his calm, his ability to prevent harm, and in doing so had shown him that quiet strength often goes unnoticed, but leaves a lasting impression. He felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that his actions had not only protected himself, but had also reassured others, creating a small pocket of safety in an otherwise tense evening. The veteran's mind wandered to the lessons embedded in the night's events. Assumptions could cloud judgment, aggression could escalate unnecessarily, and calm, measured responses could change outcomes in profound ways. He had experienced firsthand how composure could diffuse tension, prevent violence, and even teach a quiet lesson to those who acted hastily. He knew that these lessons were not just for the bikers or the diner patrons, but for himself as well, reinforcing the values that had guided him throughout life. The road stretched on, the truck's headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the highway ahead. The veteran felt a quiet satisfaction, not from confrontation or dominance, but from knowing that he had handled the situation wisely. He had faced uncertainty and potential danger, and through patience, observation, and composure, he had ensured a peaceful resolution. The lesson was clear. True strength was measured not by force but by the ability to remain calm, aware, and intentional in the face of tension. He thought about how often people rushed to judgment, letting assumptions dictate their actions. The bikers had assumed, acted, and nearly caused harm, but his calm response had created space for clarity and understanding. The encounter had been a reminder of the value of awareness, the power of composure, and the importance of respecting both oneself and others. These principles were not just abstract ideas. They were practical tools for navigating life's challenges, whether on a quiet highway or in more significant moments of conflict. The veteran reflected on the quiet power of patience. In the diner, he had allowed moments to stretch, giving the bikers time to realize their error. He had spoken carefully, chosen his words deliberately, and maintained a presence that prevented escalation. In doing so, he had not only protected himself but also set an example of measured, thoughtful action. It was a reminder that patience was often as important as courage, and that understanding the dynamics of a situation could prevent unnecessary harm. As the truck moved steadily down the highway, he considered the ripple effects of calmness. The waitress and the diner staff had seen his composure, and the patrons who remained had witnessed a moment where tension was diffused without force. Small actions, carried out with awareness and control, could influence others, creating a chain of subtle but meaningful impacts. He understood that these moments, though quiet and seemingly insignificant, could leave lasting impressions and foster respect. He thought about the bikers again, imagining them reflecting on the encounter. He hoped that the realization of their mistake would guide their future actions, teaching them to pause, observe, and assess before reacting. He did not wish them harm, nor did he hold resentment. He recognized that people often acted impulsively, and the opportunity to correct course was valuable. The encounter had been a lesson for all involved, a moment where calm, awareness, and measured response had shaped the outcome positively. The veteran allowed a small, quiet smile to cross his face. He had navigated a potentially dangerous encounter, maintained his dignity, and ensured the safety of himself and others. The night was calm now, the highway stretching endlessly ahead, and he felt a sense of quiet accomplishment. He had faced uncertainty and tension with clarity and patience, and in doing so had demonstrated the power of composure. As the hours passed, the veteran continued driving, reflecting on the simplicity and depth of the lessons from the diner. Calmness, patience, observation, and clear communication were not just tools for extraordinary moments, but for everyday life. They were principles that guided actions, prevented unnecessary conflict, and allowed one to navigate the world with intention and awareness. He felt grateful for the experience, recognizing that even challenging encounters could provide insight and growth. The night sky stretched endlessly above, stars beginning to appear in the dark, clear expanse. The veteran's thoughts returned to the idea that strength was not always visible, that quiet composure often left a deeper impact than overt aggression. The bikers had entered with confidence and force, but it was the veteran's calm, measured response that had ultimately shaped the outcome. He felt a quiet pride not in confrontation, but in the ability to influence events positively through patience, awareness, and respect. He continued driving, the road unfolding ahead, and he knew that life would continue to present unexpected challenges. Yet the lessons from the evening about composure, awareness, patience, and the power of quiet strength would remain with him. He had faced tension, uncertainty, and potential danger, and had emerged with a sense of understanding, clarity, and calm. The encounter had been more than a test. It had been a reaffirmation of values that guided him, both on the road and in life. As he drove, the veteran reflected on the subtle ways in which calm and awareness could shape human interactions. The diners, the staff, the patrons, the bikers, all had been touched, directly or indirectly, by the quiet presence he had maintained. It was a reminder that strength could be gentle, influence could be quiet, and lessons could be learned without confrontation. The night was calm, the highway open, and he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, carrying the wisdom of the evening with him as he continued his journey, confident in the enduring power of composure, patience, and quiet human strength.